Marvel was throwing everything at the wall to see what could stick during the 90s. Superheroes were getting darker, edgier, and more layered, and DC already had its crown jewel in Batman. Marvel, on the other hand, wanted a counterpoint. Out of that hunger came Darkhawk. He wasn't born out of vengeance or trauma in a gothic city, but out of a restless era where every publisher wanted their own myth. On paper, it made perfect sense. In execution, well, that's where the story gets complicated, and we'll discuss all about that. So let's get started. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
You shall pay for your treachery!
No.
The birth of a 90s hero, aiming for Marvel's Batman. Back in the early 90s, Marvel was chasing something darker. The comics scene was exploding, and readers wanted grittier heroes, like almost street-level, moody, a little broken. DC already had Batman, ruling that whole brooding vigilante corner, and Marvel didn't exactly have anyone like that. Marvel seemed to dwell more on the sassy, snarky side of heroes, and even though it did have some serious brooding heroes like Captain America, he was nowhere near as dark as Batman. So the plan was simple. Build their own kind of Batman, but younger, more tech-driven, and with that Marvel attitude. That's why they needed Darkhawk. Created by Tom DeFalco, Mike Manley, and Danny Fingeroth, he was supposed to be the next big name. A street hero with armor sharp enough to slice through shadows. Half tech fantasy, half teenage meltdown. He first showed up in Darkhawk #1 in March 1991. Chris Powell, a regular Queens kid, stumbles upon a strange amulet and suddenly finds himself swapping bodies with an android warrior. Marvel wanted him to hit that sweet spot. A high school hero dealing with real stuff, like family and fear, while also punching out crooks at night in a metal bird suit. Darkhawk had the gadgets, the stealth, and the grappling cables. He even had an attitude, but he wasn't rich like Bat or experienced. He was just a kid figuring it out, trying to survive. According to DeFalco's own account, the impetus was simple. He introduced new teenage heroes because the majority of their newsstand audience were teenagers or preteens. Manley's design vision reinforced that. He merged a hawk-like helmet and retractable wings with a grappling claw cable. Originally, the idea read like a mashup of high concept and youth culture. Marvel basically identified the gap in their universe and bam, they put out Darkhawk. DC had Batman, Marvel needed a darker, tech-forward figure who could straddle the same kind of mythic weight, but with his own teenage spin. Darkhawk's first issue set that tone. The hero starts by grappling with local crime, identity issues, and what it means to wield power before you're fully ready. The narrative tapped into that essential human moment. Now, the question here is why we keep comparing him to Batman when he's just a teenager. Well, because Marvel intended it that way. Everything about his stealth screamed Batman. His vigilante origin screamed Batman. So why underestimate a teen? The 1990s run, popular but overlooked. So here's where things get interesting. Between 1991 and 1995, Darkhawk had this 50-issue run that actually did pretty well, at least in the beginning. It was smack in the middle of that early 90s comic boom. Back then, everyone wanted edgy heroes, dark suits, and some kind of trauma to chew on. Marvel had found its formula with teenage heroes before. Wondering who? Well, Spider-Man. Now they wanted someone who could dip into Batman's territory without straight-up copying him. Darkhawk kind of fit that mold. The tone was darker than most of Marvel's usual stuff, but not too dark. It was just right for kids who were growing out of Saturday morning cartoons and sneaking into PG-13 movies. The series ran through roughly 50 issues during that span and delivered exactly what a lot of young readers thought they wanted. A high-tech, city-roaming hero who wasn't quite a brooding Bruce Wayne, but carried some of that weight. The tone? Street level, gritty-ish for Marvel at the time, but still wrapped up in teenage angst and suit-up moments. The character's debut run felt like he existed somewhere between Spider-Man's youth and Batman's tech-driven vengeance. Chris Powell was that teenager you could almost buy lunch with, except his after-school hangouts were interrupted by an alien amulet and suit of armor. Even though the story mechanics were a bit familiar. You know, the teen finds a mystical amulet, becomes a hero, blah blah blah. What sets it apart was the dual identity angle combined with armor vigilante stuff. It was a whole, how do I answer to hero duty and algebra homework, and we guess that's really why readers readers connected to him. He wasn't a billionaire with a cave full of gadgets. He was a kid with curfew and homework. But when he turned into Darkhawk, he looked like a serious player. But here's the thing. Even with all that potential, Darkhawk never quite reached that iconic level. The stories were solid, yeah, but they sometimes played it too safe. It didn't have that kind of emotional gut punch or psychological depth that made Batman so timeless. He was popular among a core group, sure, but overlooked is probably the word that sticks. A fun hero, a good ride, but without the legacy. It felt like Marvel had built this awesome shell, but never fully filled it. By the mid-90s, interest started to fade. Comics were oversaturated, and new anti-heroes popped up every other month. So basically, Darkhawk just kind of got lost in the noise. The origin myth and the android armor. Darkhawk was really meant to stand out from Batman, and it really shows. Because under the hood, this guy isn't just some vigilante with gadgets and trauma. He's literally fused to alien tech. The entire thing starts when teenage Chris Powell stumbles across this weird-looking amulet in an abandoned amusement park. Because of course he does. It's the 90s. The second he grabs it, his human body is swapped with an armored android from another dimension called Null Space, and that's what made him different. Batman builds his toys. Darkhawk becomes his. We're talking razor wings, energy blasts, flight, claws, the works. It looked like something out of a nightmare crossed with a spaceship, but the real hook was the transformation itself. When Chris used the amulet, his consciousness literally transferred into the armor, while his human body stayed in this stasis dimension. Later on, Marvel expanded this idea into something much bigger. Turns out the armor wasn't just random alien junk. It was part of a massive intergalactic order known as the Fraternity of Raptors. Yes, cosmic warriors, ancient order, galaxy-scale stuff. Suddenly, the street vigilante kid from Queens was tangled up in a story about universal balance and ancient technology. It was wild. That lore retcon pushed Darkhawk far beyond the Batman comparisons, for better or worse. See, the more Marvel leaned into that cosmic mythology, the more it drifted from the original grounded tone that made him feel relatable in the first place. Early Darkhawk was all alleys, gang fights, and local crime. Later Darkhawk was spaceships, star empires, and destiny. It gave him depth, sure, but it also made him harder to define. Still, you have to admit, the idea of a teenager wielding alien tech built for cosmic peacekeeping is pretty cool. It's like if Peter Parker's radioactive spider came with its own AI warframe, and that's what kept fans hooked. Even when the stories went off the rails, the original myth still hits hard. Behind the mask, creative intent, and missed opportunities. If you dig a little into how Darkhawk came to be, you'll see how cool the idea could have been, and how much it got tripped up. Writer Tom DeFalco once admitted that he wanted Marvel to keep building teenage heroes. His logic was that if most of Marvel's newsstand crowd is preteens, then why not give them someone they could be, not just someone they watch. He even says the seed for Darkhawk came from a rejected pitch he had done for The Fly at Archie Comics. Yep, he repurposed something he once shelved and dropped it into Marvel's early 90s rush. That right away tells you Marvel's aim. A younger hero, tech/armor driven, maybe darker than the average web slinger, but not as seasoned as the Dark Knight. The blueprint was there, but then things got messy. For one thing, even though DeFalco gave the idea, he admits he couldn't write the series himself because of the schedule. The baton passed to Danny Fingeroth, who took over as the original writer when the series launched. That handover meant the tone started to shift somewhere between the initial teen hero pitch and the full-on cosmic saga it later morphed into. And yeah, that's part of the missed opportunities list. With such an interesting start, you'd think the series would stay laser-focused on teens in armor, urban crime, and identity crisis, but the market wasn't kind. The early to mid-90s comics scene started to fracture. Spectacular boom, market crash, shifting reader attention. Suddenly, the hero who was meant to straddle Spider-Man's youth and Batman's tech vengeance vibe had to compete with extreme anti-heroes, radical redesigns, and over-the-top plot lines. The problem? Darkhawk's tone fluctuated. On one hand, you had the heaviness and teen drama. The next, you were off in space with cosmic warriors. That inconsistency diluted the Batman for Marvel vibe. Fingeroth's interpretation pushed Darkhawk into larger-than-life elements. DeFalco's original idea leaned more grounded, more relatable. What could have been a strong street-level entry found itself tangled in galactic mythos and big crossover events. That's not bad inherently, but it pulled pulled Darkhawk away from his unique niche. And when you're trying to build something distinctive, losing that focus becomes dangerous. There was tremendous potential, but the execution, the timing, and the market all piled up against it. It wasn't a failure because the idea was weak. It was a failure because the idea got stretched too thin, too fast. Retcons and cosmic reinvention, moving away from Gotham's shadows. Over the years, Darkhawk's story got twisted and retconned so many times, it's like they couldn't decide if he was Marvel's Batman or Marvel's Space Knight. One minute, he's punching out street thugs in Queens. The next, he's battling intergalactic empires. Talk about a glow-up. It all started with the War of Kings arc, where Darkhawk got tangled up in the Shi'ar Empire's cosmic drama. Suddenly, he's not just some kid with an alien suit. He's a full-fledged member of the fraternity of Raptors, an ancient order of cosmic warriors. Then came Ascension, where his connection to the Raptors deepened, and he started embracing his role as a cosmic protector. And let's not forget the Nova series, where Darkhawk teamed up with Richard Rider and got even more involved in the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. It would probably have been okay if it were just about a costume change. After all, we never complained about an updated Marvel costume. But unfortunately, they changed his whole identity along with the costume. The gritty street-level hero who once prowled the alleys of Queens was now a cosmic entity, dealing with universal threats and ancient prophecies. It was like they took the Batman comparison and threw it out the window. And that's where things got tricky. The more Marvel leaned into the cosmic stuff, the further Darkhawk drifted from his original roots. Fans who loved the original Darkhawk felt left behind, and new readers didn't know what to make of this cosmic version. The decline, lost between two worlds. The hook of Darkhawk worked in the early 90s because readers wanted someone relatable, but as soon as Marvel started shoving him into cosmic storylines, things got messy. He became too high concept for street-level stories, but still wasn't flashy enough to hang with cosmic heavyweights like Silver Surfer or Nova. He got stuck in this weird middle ground. After his original 50-issue run ended in 95, Darkhawk basically went into hiding. He wasn't cancelled with a bang, but quietly sidelined. He'd pop up in random team books, New Warriors here, Avengers there, but mostly as a background cameo or a "remember this guy?" nod. His own solo adventures dried up, and the monthly publication schedule became irregular. One issue might come out, then nothing for months. That kind of spotty presence doesn't help fan retention. Readers who grew up with him drifted away because he stopped feeling like their Darkhawk anymore. Even team roles that could have elevated him didn't stick. Darkhawk was in New Warriors for a while, but with so many other flashy heroes around, he didn't get much focus. His powers and alien tech, which were interesting solo, got lost in ensemble chaos. He also didn't get consistent writers or storylines. Like we mentioned before, some tried grounding him, and others leaned fully into cosmic drama. Fans never knew which Darkhawk they were getting, and inconsistency is brutal in comics. The 2000s didn't help either. The comic book market shifted. Big events, reboots, and brand new heroes dominated the scene. Marvel had Spider-Man, X-Men, and the Avengers pulling attention, while niche characters like Darkhawk were left to languish in back issues and forgotten corners of continuity. Even when he showed up in later events or crossovers, he was more of a nostalgic cameo than a core player. So by the time the dust settled, Darkhawk was trapped. He was too grounded for the cosmic crowd, too cosmic for the street-level vibe, and not enough of either to carry his own stories anymore. Marvel had a good concept, but the timing, the inconsistent storytelling, and the ever-changing market meant Darkhawk lost momentum and slowly faded from memory. Modern revivals and legacy attempts. So fast forward from the chaos of the 90s and 2000s, and you'll see Darkhawk wasn't ready to retire. Marvel decided to give him a shot at redemption with two modern attempts: Darkhawk Legacy of the Stone in 2017 and Darkhawk 2021 through 2022. Both tried to capture the old vibe and push something new. In 2017, Legacy of the Stone, issue 51, brought Chris Powell back into focus. The creative team, Chad Bowers and Chris Sims, said they wanted one foot in the original street-level hero idea and one foot in the cosmic mythology. So you got Chris in his home turf, and the fraternity of Raptors stuff resurfaced. It felt like a chance to reconcile Marvel's Batman angle with all the alien sci-fi baggage, but it also telegraphed that Marvel knew the character needed more than the old formula to work today. Then in 2021 through 2022, they rebooted things full throttle. The mantle passed to a new face, Connor Young, a 17-year-old star basketball player who's hit by a medical diagnosis and finds the mysterious amulet. The story explicitly said, we're doing something new and contemporary, yet respectful to what came before. So yeah, the formula was still there, with teen plus amulet plus armor. But the focus became different with identity crisis, physical fragility, high tech, and a whole new generation. But did these revivals revive the Batman tone? Kinda, but also not. On one hand, the teen hero in armor dealing with real life is still very much there. That's the DNA of the Batman analog idea. You've got a suit, night flights, and big stakes. On the other hand, the tech is sharper, the world is broader, and the emotional beats are deeper. The Connor Young version doesn't feel like Marvel's Batman as much as Marvel's tech armor teen hero for the streaming age. Whether or not that hits as hard as Batman for you depends on how much you love the street vigilante version versus how much you're okay with it going bigger. Why Darkhawk never became Marvel's Batman. On paper, Darkhawk really should have worked. He had the setup, the attitude, and even the look. A kid in a high-tech suit patrolling dark alleys, juggling family drama and moral questions? That is solid groundwork for Marvel's answer to Batman. But somewhere along the way, the whole thing lost direction. And that's pretty much the story of why Darkhawk never became what DC already had with The Dark Knight. The first problem? No consistent vision. Batman's world runs like a well-oiled machine. Gotham is always Gotham. Bruce Wayne's psychology never gets confused, and even when writers switch, the myth stays intact. With Darkhawk, that didn't happen. You had a strong debut idea from Tom DeFalco and Mike Manley, but Marvel never pinned down what kind of hero they wanted him to be. Was he supposed to fight gang lords and mobsters, or ancient alien cults? Depending on who was writing, you'd get both, sometimes in the same issue. That's what happens when editorial direction doesn't hold the line. Tone was another big mess. Batman thrives in one. Brooding, psychological, sharp-edged. He's a creature of fear and myth. Darkhawk, though, kept jumping lanes. That split personality made it hard for readers to stay invested. You can't build a legend when the ground keeps shifting under you. And then there's the emotional pull. Batman connects because his story is rooted in trauma and justice. Every version of him circles back to those same human themes. Darkhawk had the emotional beats, his mom, his brothers, and the struggle of growing up too fast. But they were constantly buried under plot twists and sci-fi detours. Readers who wanted a grounded vigilante couldn't latch on. Readers who liked Cosmic Marvel didn't fully buy him either. He was too street for space and too space for the streets. There's still a loyal corner of the fandom that treats him like this hidden gem from the 90s, waiting for the right creative team to do him justice. Marvelous verdict. Looking back, Darkhawk feels like one of those bold 90s experiments that almost worked. He maybe had the right bones, but at the same time, the wrong luck. He had the tech, the mystery, and a relatable heart beating under all that armor, but he never found his Gotham. So no, he never became Batman. But maybe that's fine, because if Marvel ever decides to dust him off and give him the focus he deserves, there is still a chance for Darkhawk to finally step out of Gotham's shadow and own his own kind of darkness. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks everyone.